So why don't I start by showing a videotape which some of you have seen and probably most of you haven't. And this is a tape of some of the things that I developed while I was at the Media Lab at MIT for 2 years in the mid-90s. So let's start with that, and I think that I'll keep the volume down and just talk over it. Now, how do I turn the lights down? And play. So this is Walker, and like I said, a few of you have seen this before, but I'll describe it again. It's an early example of an artificial life based simulation where it's an asexual reproduction, and this walker is giving birth to other walkers, and the one that moves the farthest wins and gets to replace the parent. It's not actually walking yet. This is a spring-based model, and it involves a point on the ground, which is a piece of food. And this is a more advanced stage. Notice the food is moving away. This is actually a key point here, that the more times the walker takes a bite of the food, the more repulsion the food experiences. So you won't actually see that happening here, but that's one of the things that creates more pressure for the walkers to learn to walk. This one's not going to get to the food. He dies before the food has a chance to eat the food. This secret is bad food. These are some early swimmer things that I did when I was at UCSD in '91, and I was experimenting with evolving morphology and motion as well. And these early experiments were what eventually led to Darwin Pond and Gene Pool, which is the name of two other software pieces that I did more recently, and I'll show you some examples of that. This is a two-dimensional critter, and these have learned some basic locomotion skills through a genetic algorithm. Some of these are not showing locomotion, but this one is actually a locomotion strategy. Some of these parts serve as inertial masses that help them move around. See that spot? That's the head. I gave them all a head, but I didn't tell them that it was a head, so sometimes they would use it as a foot, which was kind of painful to watch. Let's move forward a little bit here. This sort of slightly boring part talks about the morphology and the motion, the genes that control motion, and so on and so forth. And yeah, this is how the evolutionary system works. They land on the ground, and the distance that they travel is their fitness. Oh, this is also a boring part. So like I said, they often use their head for locomotion. And so what I had to do was, what I decided to do was give some fitness rewards for holding the head up higher, or not hitting it on the ground, or not moving it too fast. So there are various fitness penalties that I used for the head. These ones were rewarded for holding the head up higher. And oh, I'm sorry. There's actually audio. This one. Can the audio be turned down? Yeah. There it is. I think I've got it. So this is what it was doing. This is what it would have happened before. This is actually, it was just an automatic. It was already there. So this is an example of applying some of these constraints on head motion. So that's all I want to show there. Now I'd like to show a little bit of something that was done at Rocket Science Games, which is where I was working briefly for a while. And this is an example of taking this kind of physics and motion control and applying it towards a product. And this is a product that I designed. The product never got made because the company Rocket Science folded. But we were experimenting with many different ways of allowing users to build their own creature. And these creatures would have all of the genetics and physics, and they would be able to evolve, and you could change their environment so that they could be underwater or on the moon, and so on and so forth. And they would evolve differently based on their environments. This is an example of removing parts and adding parts. So this is a completely open-ended kind of system where it's alive the whole time, and you could be changing its anatomy and so on and so forth. Now these are rendered using soft image, but the physics comes from the real-time system, similar to what I showed just before. And finally, I'd like to show, not finally, but now I'd like to show gene pool. So this would be an example of taking some of the swimming experiments that I did earlier and turning that into a product. This is for free. You can download it from the net, from my website. And you can move around in this pool and see a number of creatures moving around. And as you can see, they have kind of pendular motion in their parts, which enable them to move through the fluid. This one wants to eat that food bit, but it doesn't quite have the motion control and anatomy to help it do that, so it's not able to get to its food bit. Over here is one that is able to swim towards its food. So it is lucky. It will replenish its energy. And now, at the end of its proboscis is another symbol which represents sexual interest. And in that moment of time after it ate its food bit, it became interested in another creature which it now wants to mate with. Now what this introduces is the concept of sexual selection. Here I'm actually moving them around with my mouse cursor, so I'm sort of putting my hands into evolution just to demonstrate how very interested it is. Notice it's constantly looking at that yellow creature, making it hard to get. And actually here I'm going to, I think in this demo, I'll actually help them mate. I'll put them together just to demonstrate, see the little babies growing there. So these two offspring inherit the genes from both parents through crossover. And they're growing here, and they have their proboscis symbols show that they're interested in eating food, so they're aimed at a food bit. This is one of the more complex creatures. This all runs in real time, and there are up to 300 creatures zooming out of the pond. What's that?
What's the URL?
What's the
URL.
Ventrella.com, my last name.com.
Do the creatures see the entire world at the same time?
They have a view horizon, so every creature can see up to a certain horizon.
Is that an evolvable?
No, that's not evolvable, but that is a good candidate for something that's evolvable. Now let's see, what is this showing? I'm not sure what this is showing.
Going for heavy, yeah.
Oh yeah? Oh, did you see it? Is that what it said on the interface? Right. So one thing I forgot to say is that you can set the criterion for attraction. So right now, the criterion for attraction is heavy. And so the heavier ones are the ones that the swimmers will choose and go for. Now this is an example of a gene pool that has evolved for quite a while, and you can see this anatomy and motion. He's hitting the edge there. Part of the experiment of doing this was to find out whether certain criteria for attraction would inhibit evolution. So for instance, we're about to see a mating here. For instance, if you set the attraction to be not moving very much or moving as little as possible, something like this happens, where you get these little things that aren't moving very much. I can't remember whether the attraction criteria was for lack of motion or smallness, but they both have similar results. Surprisingly, they all survive, perhaps because they're not moving, they're not burning off energy. They can live longer and have more time to serendipitously happen upon a mate. Oh, I believe this is for speed. So now I'd like to show brought my handy flashlight. I'd like to show what I'm working on right now, which is a variation on gene pool. Now I have to apologize, it's running dreadfully slow. This runs normally about 10 times as fast on my home computer, but I had to borrow this one because you couldn't get one of those to work. But essentially, what we see here is a three-dimensional version of gene pool, and this is a planet which is covered with numerous creatures. Now I haven't worked out all the rendering, nor even the physics yet on this, so I'm just getting this started. Same kind of interface, only this navigation interface works on a sphere instead of on a flat plane. And normally I'd be able to be zooming throughout the sphere. So sorry that it's slow. We'll zoom in here and zoom in on one of these creatures. So they're three-dimensional instead of two. They are and they're on a sphere. And there's a level of detail thing going on here so that when you get closer, they're rendered in more detail. By putting them on a sphere, I'm hoping to discover some interesting new properties of evolution that happen on a sphere as opposed to a flat surface. And in fact, also, I might be able to introduce something like a sun and a spinning sphere, which introduces day and night, and all of the energy considerations that come from that.
When will we get to download this version?
Whenever it's done. This is one of those evening kind of red-eye kind of projects. But I'm hoping to finish this and maybe present it at present it maybe in the summer at another conference. And at that point, I would have it downloadable just like Gene Pool. This is also very slow. This should be running 10 times faster. But this is an example of some of the kind of cartoon techniques, pseudophysics, that can be used for making some interesting creatures. This bird would be sort of bopping around, looking around. And it's a combination of physics and some, well, it's various forms of pseudophysics involved here. Some springs and orientation springs and so on. And this also will be downloadable.
Does he know he's on a slow machine?
What's that?
Does he know he's on a slow machine?
You're just moving faster.
He knows he's on a slow machine, so he's moving slower just to kind of compensate. Now this bird is all wired up to be interactive and ready to be played with, but I haven't programmed any of that yet.
That's my daughter. That's my daughter.
I was wondering what that was.
It reminds me of that digital Biota T-shirt with the galaxy and stuff.
So that's all I have to show, and so maybe we can have question and answer.
I played with the 2D version actually a lot. Sucked a lot of hours out of my life. Thank you very much. But you have an option. I think it's Frankenstein's or something like that.
Yes.
Which were, and I think you said something like these will never evolve. But so my
Highly
here's my
unlikely.
question. Like, what's the most complex or most interesting form that's evolved given a lot of time? I mean, did you ever let this run for like weeks and then
Yeah.
be really surprised by what was on the other end?
Well, what evolves is definitely creatures that are optimized for whatever they're being pressured to do, which is swim, and depending on the attraction criterion. But there are certain forms that just don't evolve. And I think it's because of the nature of, perhaps if I were using a GP model, it might be more open-ended. But none of those Frankenstein creatures evolve. These are engineered swimmers that I made by hand that have various regular geometrical forms. Most of them are not swimmy kind of anatomies, so they wouldn't naturally evolve. But it's fun to actually see them and see what they evolve into, sort of devolve from their geometrical shapes into more streamlined shapes. On the T-shirt, there are these little yellow creatures that are swimming around. Those are examples from that pool.
What are those things called?
Swim bots.
I have two related questions. First of all, were we seeing any kind of predator-prey stuff there in the early?
The gene pool?
Yeah.
No, we weren't. That's usually the first question, and it's a good question. I've tried to, on a couple of occasions, to rebuild the infrastructure for predator-prey, and I found it to be difficult. I haven't spent as much time on it as I wanted to, but I really wanted a food chain to emerge without very much definition from above, and it's harder to make it more emergent.
The related question then is, I presume that these are all sort of analogous to single-cell organisms, even though they have some differentiated structures?
I wouldn't.
And if so, was there any provision for them to be sticky, clump with other things, shared genetic material, or even pool it for multicellular structures?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
Well, I'm just wondering if there was any provision for them to be sticky, let's say clump with others, begin to develop, share, let's say pool their genetic material, begin to build up colony structures.
Right. Yeah, they would have to have behaviors for that, and I didn't give them the brains or the motion control to be able to have that emerge. So it's a pretty straightforward artificial life model of emergent locomotion and sexual selection. It's basically what it shows in real time. So
Could you tell us a little more about your that bird? Was that an evolved creature? Or was it
no, it wasn't. I should have mentioned that. It wasn't evolved, but I consider that to be something that can be evolved, and it's sort of another area of work that's a little closer to the kind of work that we're doing in the company, which doesn't have an evolutionary component, although it could have a genetic component. It's just not evolved genetics. It's just a set of parameters set up for genetic manipulation. But by building these kinds of creatures more in the cartoon space, I'm identifying some of the things that make its behavior the way it is, and there are parameters. And so the attempt is to build these animals in a parameter space as opposed to a scripted animation space, which is more traditional way. And by building these animals with parameters, they are being built with a genetic paradigm in mind.
I noticed in Darwin's Pond, you're able to pull out creatures that had evolved for a while, put them in test tubes in this kind of cryogenic suspension for a while. Do you have any interesting experiments that you did with that capability, where you combined them later in other colonies? Any interesting experiments with that capsule?
Just for an introduction, Darwin Pond is a product, another product that I worked on at Rocket Science, and that's also for free on the website. And like he described, there are these test tubes, so you can be evolving a pool and grab individual swimmers and dump them in the test tube and save them in files, and bring up another pool and introduce those swimmers into a completely new environment. Perhaps the best example of what can happen is there's a breed of swimmers called eels, and they're really wiggly and they make you very itchy to look at, and they swim very fast. And I would take one eel and put it into any average pool, and within a minute it's pretty much swarmed over with eels, and it's really fun to watch them just take over and eat all the food, and everyone else dies.
I just have a little comment about Darwin's Pond. I got a copy from Bruce at one point, and I took it home and gave it to my son, who was 5 years old at the time. And he started playing with it and putting the creatures in the test tubes, and he had figured it out fairly quickly.
Good.
But he had to go to bed one day, so it was late in the evening, and he wouldn't go to bed before he heard from me the letters that he had to type in order to say Saturday night dot, I guess it was DNA or something like that.
Saturday night .dna.
Something like that. He had to name it after this evening, and that was the last creatures he had named. So he had to say that before he went to bed, otherwise he would refuse to go to bed.
Well, what excites me is that little wiggly creatures like this, which are really not realistic, people can become attached to them. It's just fascinating how people can become attached to things because they're lifelike. And they don't have big eyes and fluffy tails.
Can you just say something about the technology you used to produce that programming language?
C, Win32 calls, and that's it.
And the graphics?
The graphics is the graphic calls. I don't know what it's called. Win32?
Windows SDK.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, thanks very much, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Right, well, now we're into our practical discussion session. Is Jan are you joining us for this, Jan?
Yeah.